Computer. Lights.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. It is Friday, the 15th of April, for reasons that no real reason why I'm telling you that. I'm still coughing and hacking up what's left of that cold, but I have my coffee. All right. I don't know where everybody else is. Like, I had brought up the idea of good morning. I did. I really liked last night's episode of Picard. Let's get on music here. I'm still coughing. Is it rolling? You running? You running? I guess you're running. There we go. Yeah, I really liked last night's episode. It was an interesting thing. So Pepper's getting ready. He'll be here in a sec. So anyway, yeah, it was a good episode. It was solid. So anyway, let's see here. I don't know where Pepper went. All right, so I'll go on ahead and start with what I've been doing. And what I have been doing is plotting out the first two issues of Momentary Ghosts. So I've got episode 1 here broken into its two issues. This is issue 1, this is issue 2. We've got more sort of, I know more about what's going on in issue 1 than I do about what's going on in issue 2. So I don't have a lot of writing in yet here on issue 2, which is fine. For me, plotting out and doing sort of a detailed deep dive into how the story is set up is better. I tend to ramble, and I know you were all shocked, but my writing style is also very free form and rambly. And so when I do writing, I have to break it down and tell myself, you only have 5 pages for this scene, or you only have 3 pages for this scene. Because I like to do scenes that are long and have lots of exposition and things like that. So I really like to do long running scenes. And I have noticed as I have been writing these episodes that the scenes that I have written are 40 trillion million billion words long. And yeah, I know, right? Who knew? I ramble? What? And so it's good to know that when we're looking at an episode, I'm looking at like how many pages we've got in here, right? For example, here we're looking at Momentary Ghosts issue 1. These are 30. So at the bottom is the page number 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 32. There are only 32 pages to an issue. There are 64 pages in episode 1. And part of this is trying to keep from rambling too much. There has to be certain aspects in my comics. I have to have a personal story bit. You know, it can't just be, wow, I lost 2 viewers talking about rambling. That's funny. Anyway, so here we've got kind of going with, this is the normal section here. This is the coffee and the general rule 21 and doing the log and all of that stuff, which shows that this is a normal world where we normally have just a spaceship tootling around doing spaceshipy things. Right? Then it enters into moments sphere of, you have a question about, well, no, you can ask away. I'm just rambling about story. What do I know, right? What's your question about last night's story? Or last night's Star Trek? I will. In the meantime, I have started to, I have a, so certain people in this household, and I won't name any names, but they've got 4 legs and a tail. No, not another watcher. That's not a watcher. That was just Picard's dad. So, and it's James Calais. So a funny side story about that. As soon as we saw James Calais, my wife, who she's not a Trekkie, but she's a sci-fi fan, right? So I mean, like, she enjoys watching Star Trek, but she's not. You know, she looked at him and said, "Is that Bashir?" And I said, "No, that's Gaius Baltar." Which was funny because we've watched BSG and it was one of our highlights to do when we were younger while we were in Japan, because we were kind of tootling along through it in Japan. We'd rent it at Tsutaya, which is a video store. And so, anyway, that was a funny story. Yeah, he's from Battlestar Galactica. He's Gaius Baltar. Although we were making jokes that we didn't trust him because he was Gaius Baltar. But I've got to admit, they pulled a fast one on me that I really liked. For those of you who have not seen last night's episode of Picard, you might want to plug your ears, or, plug your nose. I guess you could plug your nose. He's done other things. Of course he has. But us sci-fi fans know him from that. So that's sort of a thing. Kind of cool. Anyway, so Patrick Stewart has talked about a number of times that his father had PTSD from World War II. And when he came back from the war, he had violent episodes where he would beat up his wife and he would beat up Patrick Stewart. And so one of the things that Patrick Stewart really stands for is victims of abuse and things like that. It's a very important thing for him. I was pretty sure that was what they were headed for. And the twist was a nice subversion of my expectations. Because that is exactly what I thought they were headed for. Hey, Pepper has joined me. So has Colton. All at the same time. We got lots of people here all at the same time. Look at us.
Now we just need, everyone else.
I was going to say, did you plan that? Because, it was just me, and then both of you guys showed up at literally, a second or two apart.
I don't know about Colton, but,
But you planned it. Anyway. Good to see you guys. we were discussing last night's episode of Picard. It was a good episode. So, still can't hear you, Colton. You got audio issues.
Guy muted him.
Yeah, that was what happens.
That better?
That's better. Now we've got you.
I was like, weird. It should be working.
So, anyway, yep. Last night's episode of Picard was pretty good. I liked it. I am doing
Mic
story
check.
plotting.
You're story plotting?
Yeah, I'm plotting my story.
Mm.
Oh, I thought you were making graphs.
I thought it was
I'm-
because he had the plots.
I lost the plot usually. Ghost Hand, I don't know. It's a different taste for people, I think. So it's all right.
was
Nobody
gonna
has to
say.
like it.
Peppers and overalls. You're plotting.
Yep,
Plotting
it's a
some
thing.
land. I don't know. Got nothing.
We got farming jokes going on all
Yep.
over the place. What I was saying was that I have set up the graph for episodes 1 and 2, or issue 1 and 2 here of my comic,
Mm.
based on that graph that I downloaded
that's
from the
fine.
guy from the manga university thing,
Mhm.
where he was talking about the arc of a standard manga is this orange arc underneath here, which I actually mimicked pretty well right here, where they've got 3 sort of high points in the story, an act 1, an act 2, and an act 3. And then this low point here is where you have all of your story exposition for, it's like a thing. And then here, there's a down point where like everything just kind of comes to a screeching halt sort of thing, but you have your 3 high points in the episode. So I was just plotting this out. This episode, the first issue, doesn't match the pattern at all. So I just went ahead and said,
Are we
this
going to
is
see Raph today?
maybe. Did he just say he was going to join?
No, I was looking at the chat and he actually saw the chat. I'm like,
Sometimes he's on dad duty in the mornings. He actually messaged me a couple of nights ago and said, "When are you switching
father
to
of
night?"
7. Of course he's on dad duty. They never end.
Yep.
As soon as
But
as soon as the oldest is like, "Hey, I'm turning 18 and graduating," he's like, "I'm having another." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yep.
Raph, stop."
I know.
I'm joking.
That's
I love Raph.
so Raph.
This is why I told Bill, no, I don't want 6 children.
Right.
God no.
I mean, I'm like, no.
Like
No.
maybe 1, and that's still a maybe right now. Like when I was younger, yes, but now I'm just kind of like,
You know
do I
what?
still
If you
do I
don't
want to
want-
do this now?
This is a big thing for me. Having had a kid now, I can really safely say, if you don't want kids, don't have kids. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And nobody should shame you, and nobody should make fun of you, and nobody should, all of that's BS.
It's a whole job. I have the one
Because
just
this
keeping
Yeah, kids are,
a very single number.
yeah, kids are really hard to deal with, and you have to be patient, and you have to be ready to deal with all of the issues. And
Well, it's
Right.
kind of like
Oh, Pepper, you just got your first adoption.
you can just adopt Brent's.
Brent, as much as I would like to adopt your older child, my husband wants a baby.
Yeah, and she's
So
preteen, and she
Yeah.
is just about to go into. Yeah, I was about to say she's
She's
just about to go
going
into
on
the
20.
worst,
none of my sisters
hardest time to deal with a girl.
none of my sisters went from like 10 to 20 or 11 to 20 or like, none of my sisters did that. They went from being 10 to 40-year-olds.
Right.
Okay, like
Good times. Good times.
I have 5 sisters. Trust me, I could probably handle your daughter. That's not a problem. The problem is my husband wants a baby, and once we get the baby, if we take her in, she's going to be looking like a glorified babysitter.
Right.
And I don't want that for her. No.
So, anyway, the Yeah, I really am big on the fact that if you don't want kids, don't have kids.
Oh, same.
Yeah. So don't let anybody pressure you, Colton. If you don't want kids, don't have them. If you do want kids, have
Hey,
them.
I've had 2 baby scares in my life, and they both times I was like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready.
Yep.
Oh, but
gosh.
I also have to say one thing because of the process I'm going through, and I do talk a lot about it, and I understand that some people get sick of me talking about it. I honestly, going through this process and then having a previous relationship where I try to have ones biologically,
Uh-huh.
it really does prove if you really want a child prior to adopting a child, because at some point in the process they are examining how you answer everything they're interviewing you with, and if you have like one weird worded message, you can be denied.
Yep.
Yep.
Like you can, and
I keep saying I wish biologicals had that same
Yeah.
problem.
Right.
Because I mean, there are a lot of people who really shouldn't have had kids.
I had a lot of
Right.
friends that I looked at and I was like, I feel sorry for you because of who your parents are, because they really don't want you, but they're just dealing with you until you're 18. And there was like, at least 2 of my friends I know, as soon as they hit 18, they were both kicked out. They both had to do their own thing after that, and they never talked to their parents ever again.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, I can't imagine that. I mean, like there are times where I'm like bitter and angry at my kid.
Yeah, but at the same time, like those are people
I'm
that should
actually
never have
not
had
looking
kids. I'm
forward to
glad
the
they
day
did because they're
when
those.
he
I know
walks
those
out
people.
the door and says, "Bye, Dad."
Yeah,
I'm going to be all sad. I'm going to cry for like days. It's going to be horrible.
well, and Bill's like, oh no, I want them to stay at the house as much as oh, okay, cool. Yeah, thank you, Brent. And
I'm half
like,
adopted, so
yeah, I mean, I have like people who I consider parents, not like as I grew up, because obviously for obvious reasons, my parents were, when they were around, they kind of weren't really around sometimes, and when they weren't around, it was just we needed an adult sometimes.
yeah,
But I mean, in regards to it though, like me and Bill literally can choose on how many kids we want. Like
true.
we can.
Yeah.
And
You guys actually have like a very interesting and unique situation.
Yeah.
There won't be any baby oopses.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
like
unless Bill
specific.
is not telling me something,
Right.
and I've been with him for over 10 years.
Doubtful.
That would be a very big surprise.
That would be a surprise.
That would be a first. That would be.
I mean,
that would
actually,
be the actual
the more
first.
I think about it, the more I'm like, that's actually kind of comforting, because biologically now, my wife and I are thinking about this, and we're like, we're both way too old to have another baby.
Oh, don't
if we
say
were to
that.
have a baby
Don't
oops
say
right
that.
now, it'd be like, oh God, you know what I mean?
I was
Like,
saying, guy, my friends both were in that same scenario. They're like, we're too old to have a kid. Like, we think like we're both dried up and everything. And of course, what happened?
Right.
It was on his birthday. He's like, oh, I'm getting some. This is awesome. And 6 months later, guess what? But
You're
also,
still
they
getting
also were
some.
getting in the middle of
just
like
not the same thing.
Well, it was it was a weird one because like also that same year they both were like, okay, we're gonna like it's not the kids moved out, it's just us.
Hey, Andrew.
Like it's just us now. Like basic relationships nowadays. Like all your kids growing up, everything. People are like, all right, we're just not in love anymore. So they're going through a divorce. And guess what? There's another kid coming through, and they're like, this puts a damper on a few of our ideas right now.
Right.
So
well, I mean,
and that's a different thing altogether. But I mean, it's still like
at the same time, like when you think that you can't
you don't
you're
ever
shooting
make the
blanks every
assumption
day,
that you
may not be
dried
shooting
up.
blanks.
You don't ever assume you're shooting blanks.
I just want to point out, like my upbringing was very weird. My godmother was one of those people. Like at 18, she had to be out of the house the very next day with an apartment set up, everything like that. However, their family was still incredibly close. So, like, there are some incidences. And so basically when Bill talks about like having our kids like stay with us even though they're going to school or they're working or saving up for like their own place and stuff like that, I'm one of those people like, no, they're 18. They need to be on their own. Like, okay, yes, I wanted to be a parent. I'm good. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm starting to. Oh
I'm
no,
sorry.
we've lost Andrew again.
Do you have any internet connections?
I don't know, or maybe not interested in our
subject.
topic.
Yeah. But anyways, as far as storytelling goes, it makes it
Storytelling.
interesting to have these experiences to go from that to telling stories, because when you tell stories about stuff like that and you go to plot lines like Guy was showing, you know, there it goes.
But also having friends that have
so
gone through
one
these
of the
situations
things
too,
that-
so you can
Yeah.
always come to them and ask them, like, "Hey, I have an idea for the story. How far off am I?" And you're like, "Well, from my experience, here's this, but here's also another person you should probably talk to, get a little bit more information."
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the world changes how you look at things.
Yep.
Um,
And Brent, I
because-
just wanna oops, sorry, I wanna just respond to his. I'm not against it, but I do want them to explore options outside.
Sure.
Of the house.
But I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, the world changes things. If things keep going the way they're going, by the time my kid is 18 and has a job, the job's going to be minimum wage, and there will be no way that my kid will be able to afford a 1-bedroom studio apartment. So there has to come a point where you realize that the practicality of the world is just simply not going to work. You know.
Oh no, and you're actually
Yeah.
I can speak on this because me and my brother both had at 18 our lives were different. Like not 18, mine was 19 because I graduated late, but my as soon as I hit 19, I was pretty much pushed out the door.
Right.
Of like, hey, you need to learn what the world is, blah 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 blah. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. Like you said, I can go to college, I'd be fine, I could stay here, but that's not true. So then I moved out, and every time I was in between houses, I would come back, live with my parents for like about a month or two, and then go back into the new scenario that I was going to go into, because at least I had that opportunity, which was nice. For my brother, though, he's only what? I'm 30. Oh shit, he turns 30 this year. Holy shit. We're like 2-3 years apart. So he has pretty much like stayed with my parents the whole time, but he's more financially stable than I am. And I don't know if that's because of how we were both treated differently within that scenario.
It might just be personalities.
But also might be personalities too. But I mean, me and him are very both like business brain too. So like we're very similar in those, like the money management and all that stuff. But for some reason, I don't know if that could have been a different player. Like I was always looking for, oh, I need the more money, so I'm going to move to this job. Where he was like, I don't technically have to worry all the time about money, so I can just sit in this career that's not paying me much right now and build it up.
Yeah, well, one of the things, like my sister and I are night and day. I've mentioned this a lot. Like we are completely radically different people. Which is why we're actually really close now. We weren't when we were kids, but now we're very close because there is no area of which we overlap to argue. And so, so it's one of those weird things where
That's space food, Brent.
she just moved out when she got, she went to college. She went on ahead and went straight into the dorms and was happy as a clam and never looked back. Whereas me, I had to struggle, and I don't think I was out of the house until I was like 22.
Okay.
At which time, my best bud, whom I've talked about a number of times, who's the engineer, he was like, "Look, I can't afford to keep this apartment by myself. Move in with me." And I was like, "Okay," because like
I can make that work.
Yeah, because my grandmother had moved back at that point, and she was dying slowly over like years, and she was causing a lot of stress in the house, and it was very
As I said,
difficult.
usually is how death works. It's not
Yeah,
like
so it was an unpleasant experience. And so my mom and I sat down and she said, look, just get out while you can, you know, while you still can before your grandmother makes you miserable too.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't that I was kicked out. Mom would have been happy to stay with me forever.
Yeah.
You know, because especially since I was paying part of the rent, I was, you know, paying, you know, at the time and stuff
Oh,
like that. And I was, you know, I actually had a pretty decent job and I was doing pretty good and stuff like that. And so it was a thing that was working really well. And my mom lived by herself effectively, except with my grandmother.
oh, so there are some opportunities I did have when I did move back in with my like so like when my parents did get a divorce, it actually fell right on when one of my leases was up. So I was me and my brother both brother stayed with my dad, my I stayed with my mom to make sure that
Make
they
sure
were
everything
okay
was
during the
good.
transition.
Yeah.
And actually I stayed with her for like 2 years and the part and I guess I did use this to my advantage at the same time because that
Sure.
was also when Red Team Go started.
Right.
Mhm.
So she was like, "Oh, you don't make that much money. Like, don't worry about it. Just being here emotionally is going to be the best thing for me." I'm like, "All right, cool." 2 years later, she found out that I could have paid everything that she needed because I was actually making more money than she thought. But that was her thought process, and I told her that. We had this conversation multiple times.
Right.
But in that sense, though, it actually benefited me because I was able to take all that extra money and dump it into Red Team Go, and
Yeah.
actually experience actually running a company and all doing all that traveling and everything all that one time. It was nice, but I
I
did take
feel like
advantage of
I
it.
don't know the depth of Red Team Go sometimes.
It depends on who's. It depends on whose story you really want to follow with
See,
it.
I
Well, no, I
usually
mean,
go to
I
Colton
have
for Red
heard
Team
all
Guys.
kinds of wild stories about Red Team Go.
I usually only go to Colton, guy. I usually only go to Colton.
Well, no, I mean,
I
like
mean,
I've
it's the
heard
same reason why a lot of people only come to me when they start hearing stories. Is because they're like, "Colin, you're the only
the
person that was at the
politics. I'm not
tables all
talking
the
about. I'm not
time." I was like,
talking
"You're right."
because I know that there was falling out. I know that there was all kinds of bad blood and things like that. I
Yeah.
mean, I know that because, like, also there are individuals who don't really want to, you know, interact. I've seen people
Oh
like
yeah.
avoid conventions and things like that. So I know there's bad blood. I have a like a mental thing where people will tell me all the bad things and then I'll forget it. So
That's
I'll
good.
know that there was a
That's
bad
good.
thing, but I don't care. You know what I
My
mean? Like
first,
it doesn't bother me. What is interesting isn't that. That's not the part that was interesting. To me, from my point of view, Red Team Go is a bunch of people sitting at Perkins drawing. It was like a club put together.
That's
You
how
know
it
what I mean?
started.
Like
yeah.
we all just
Mhm.
agreed to be together. And the
Mhm.
business side came up as in my head, the vision that I have of this was that everybody was sitting at Perkins, and then one day somebody said, you know what, we could publish stuff. You know what I mean? Like that. So I know that there's a difference in
Yeah.
what happened or how it happened, but I didn't realize how much structure you had put into it. I think Brian's about to join us.
Oh,
I didn't
sweet.
realize how much structure you had put into it. I know
Mhm.
you put structure in while I was there. I
Yeah.
saw that. What I saw with my own eyes. But there's stuff that was going on prior to me joining the club. I had no idea.
Well, actually, so you started around the same time I came in as well. Like, I think I came in like a month or two before you.
Oh, okay.
But
So about the same time.
it was around the time, specifically, if you really want to know, like around the time, like if you noticed right before it started, we were seeing a decline in people showing up at Perkins. A lot of people were like not coming as much. They were just not as enthused as coming. It was like usually then it just became like the normal 5 people: you, me, Bob, Roberto, Ross, like the basic people that everybody just came to hang out
Everybody
with
was just
Bob
there.
most of
Yeah,
the
we were doing
time.
our work. Head
And
down.
me and Christina were sitting there and talking. Like I was talking to her, and I was like, "Why aren't we doing anything? Like all these people are leaving, and everybody I talked to about it is like, oh, we're just, I can go anywhere and just draw because they weren't finding any interest in just coming and hanging out with us anymore. Because I was like, well, why not? Then they were also the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, well, cool. And I was talking to Christina. She's like, we made a comic. It just never got published. I'm like, one more time. And
Mhm.
that's where Dino Apocalypse came in. Because all the pages were done.
I didn't want to get involved.
I just
in
had to
that.
get it literally took me about a month to get all the papers from everybody who had stories, get them all lettered. and have get all the rights to people actually agreeing to let me publish it for them. And reasoning why was because it was for the group. I was trying to get the group something, so I'm like, we can run tables with this. Like, we can give people like experiences. We can do all this stuff, and that's how it started. And as soon as it all kind of took off, there was some bad blood at that time too, which resurfaced at the end as well. But
it's all good.
No, it's fine. It was me just trying to light a fire. That's all it was. I was just trying to light a fire, and I lit the fire, and some people didn't like that there was a fire being lit. But about a month or two later, they saw that, oh, this is what you meant by a fire. Like, you're trying to get people enjoying and doing stuff again and being a big group. And I was like, yes, that's just what we really want to do. And next thing you know, we were starting to do shows every time. We were doing Denver Comic-Con drawing for kids. We were doing all these other things. And like, I had the opportunity at the time because my mom and dad split, and I was with my mom. So I had all this extra money, and I was like, cool. So I started buying tables and started getting us out there and just like pushing shit and left and right. And the next thing you know, we had business cards, we had banners, we had like, it was crazy how fast it just took off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For me, I didn't want to get into that. I mean, that was not. I wanted to just have I still work from home, and I'm here all the time, 24/7, and I just really needed somewhere else.
Yeah.
To be.
Well, and that's why like I try to keep it separated at the same time.
And and of course I'm old and I'm an old artist, which means that I have, since I was 21 or 22, had people come up to me and go, I've got a business opportunity. You do a lot of drawing and I will get us famous. And I do a lot of drawing, and then they're like, bye. And they disappear.
Yeah, I learned that too through Red Team Go as well, because I got a lot of NDAs that never got sent.
Yeah, I generally am like, I will team up with Pepper, and Pepper can draw 12 pages and I'll draw 12 pages, and that's acceptable. And then Pepper can sell it on his table and I can sell it on my table. That is an acceptable trade. But if Pepper comes to me and says, I've got this great script that all you have to do is draw it, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm out.
See, and he says this, but at the last convention, I tried to hand him a script and he wouldn't read it.
I wouldn't read it. Wait, you did?
Yeah. 2, actually.
I heard the badoop by the way of Brian. Did you hear that?
I heard the badoop. I thought I heard something. I don't know.
Brian, I thought Brian tried to join, but anyway. I don't know why I wasn't reading the script there, Pepper. I don't remember it at all, which means
I remember trying to hand them to you, and you're like, not now.
Right. Okay. So it must have been something.
It was probably a busy thing.
Yeah, it was probably busy. Probably a busy signal.
Yeah.
So I would like to actually. I wouldn't mind reading your scripts. I read.
But I was also saying, like, Guy, though, like, it's different when you also know that Pepper's reliable about that.
It is, but when
you start dealing with people that are actually reliable and people that you're like, yes, I'm just trying to get jobs, and you start taking them, and next thing you know, they don't go anywhere. You're just like,
yeah, but I mean, legitimately, my feeling in general is just that I don't mix funds, and that's totally cool. And I recently have also, and so in other words, I liked what you were doing. It was nothing personal. Was really what I'm saying.
Oh, I know it wasn't because I didn't
join. I didn't want to join that aspect.
Yeah, no, you still talked to me. That's why I know it wasn't personal.
Yeah, I think I even said it straight up.
Yeah. I'm not. Oh no, you made it very clear, and that's why I was like, if you ever just want to join us, you let me know. And you did like once or twice, I think, on a splash. Did you do a splash page? I can't remember.
I don't remember if I did a splash. Splashes would work.
I know you came and helped me out at tables on occasion for drawing.
Oh yeah. I didn't.
And that part, I was like, you want to help me with that? That's actually more help than anybody else is giving me right now. Believe me.
And it's a shame because that I hear a lot of what I've heard makes sense, that part of the problem was tabling.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bring up all of the stuff because I don't want to implicate people or whatever. But yeah, it's a shame because I didn't actually catch
it's been
on
like
to that.
5 years now. I don't care.
Yeah, I didn't catch on to that until later, and I wish I had, because I would have tabled with you just to have the experience of sitting tables.
Yeah, I mean,
because
when
that's
it
a
was
thing that
just
I'm not
like
good at.
when it was small, like it was just me doing a table every day. Like,
Now
and
I
it was
know
all
that
Red Team Go stuff.
sometimes you were tabling when we were geek tanking, and that's an issue. Like we were both working the same con,
Oh
and
yeah.
I was in geek tank mode.
Oh, and I knew that way too. Like usually, like Denver Comic Con, like I knew I was like, I'm not gonna ask Guy because I know he's doing Geek
I'm
Tank
working
stuff.
geek tank, yeah.
All the big game shows, like you were doing Geek Tank, so I was like, I'm not gonna ask you. I can't ask you. Like,
But yeah,
I'm not gonna
like
try and make you pull
I
like
love
away from
doing
your original setup.
the weird things. Like I just found the baseball shirt from the Rockies thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing that.
Same.
It's such a good experience just sitting there and having to be forced to draw
The
and forced to
first
draw fast
Rockies
because
game
there's
that
somebody
we did.
standing right there. I love Sakura
Oh.
Festival for the same reason.
Same. I'm still waiting for Gerard to let me know if that's actually happening.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause I'll call
I
in that day.
love when Manga Tyson does stuff like that. I love that stuff. That's
Yeah.
the greatest.
And that stuff's like literally like those little tiny shows is literally what kind of I would say came out of what like Red Team Go was about.
Yeah.
And that's because the people that are running them now are like, no, we liked what you did. We like the camaraderie side of it. Like, then let's just keep it camaraderie.
Yeah.
We don't have to do anything crazy. Like with me and Gerard, when we first like when we talked about it, I think we talked about it. I was like, what do you really want to do with this? He's like, just get animated art, anime style artists and come and just draw.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's all I want. Let's go.
This and that's
Like,
all.
and we don't
wanted.
make it a competition. We don't worry about like our sales. Like everybody, we split the tip pot because we all are there. We're all working. That's the whole thing. It's like no one gets more than the other person because we're all here for the exact same thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And whatever you guys make off of your own stuff, that's your own. But
Yeah.
everything for the tip pot, we just split.
And I love I love things like goofy, stupid competitions.
Yes.
Like Bob and I competing over who could draw more pictures during.
Or like the
that
Pikachu
was just
contest we had at the
stupid,
end
but
of
I
that
loved
soccer festival. You remember that one?
Yeah, where we were doing Pikachu.
Like
competitions.
nonstop because the Pokemon movie came out. So we literally were drawing Pikachu's nonstop. So we
We
had
were
literally
just
we set a
nonstop
timer.
Pikachu.
Here's 5 minutes. You guys have 5 minutes to do a Pikachu, and
That was-
all six
that
of us
was
were
so
on
much
camera
fun.
doing a Pikachu.
And like things, really silly things like when we were doing, what was it we were doing? Or the Spam Masubi. Gosh, I love this.
Oh, how many we ate throughout the day?
I mean, like
I
he
think
keeps
Kundi
bringing
won that
them over
one.
to me because, like, he was like, that was the thing that was so funny. Gerard was like, "Oh, you got to try Spam Masubi," and I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I know what Masubi is, but I'm not sure what's. Just thinking about this sounds horrible. And he's like, "No, you got to try it." So he brought one over, and I'm like, "This is awesome. This is really good." And he's like, "It's Hawaiian," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, but you're using a Japanese word, which is a weird." You know, my
Using
brain's
a
having a
Japanese
word.
schism here for this.
That's also like I know where that food developed since it developed in Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
It's very big there.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Well,
It's
that
very
was
big.
the thing.
But
After-
I just wanna kind of reel you guys in a little bit because this is becoming more about talking about Red Team Go than what we're actually supposed to be talking about.
Yes.
The artist
Anyway,
check-in.
The
I'm
the
missing, and it's
TLDR on
great.
this
And I
was-
tried to deflect this prior.
that
And
works. That works. I get it.
Yeah.
To wrap it up, I don't remember all the bad stuff. I know there was bad stuff. I don't remember all the bad stuff. I don't care. I mean, I wasn't involved, so. And I've talked to people about it, and nobody seems upset that I play both sides or whatever on this one. Nobody seems bothered by it. Nobody seems upset about it. So I'm good. I don't have to worry.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay. So back to storytelling. Because, and I know you guys are all shocked that I ramble. But I don't want, I would write like 70-page comics that, great talk show host. Just have you on Geek Tank.
I believe we have talked about having me on Geek Tank one of these days. I just don't have in yet, Brent. But I do apologize for Andrew for having him leave so quickly.
I don't know if Andrew is a good buddy of mine from the fan film days. We worked on fan film projects together.
Okay.
And
did you set up storylines like that?
actually, we didn't work on projects together. He was on one project and I was on a different project. But because we were both on Star Trek fan films, we've become buddies.
Okay.
So
have you applied this to Star Trek stuff too, or no?
do what?
Have you applied how you're writing right now to Star Trek stuff as well?
No, I felt like I free-formed Tamerlan.
Okay.
And because at the time, first of all, when I did Tamerlan, I didn't really consider the idea of printing it. That was never a consideration because I knew that I wouldn't be able to go anywhere with it. You know what I mean? Like I knew I wouldn't be able to sell it. I wouldn't be able to put it on a table. And in 2005, legitimately, I didn't think, I mean, printing in 2005 was still very difficult and complicated. And you had to have a repertoire with a big printer that did web press stuff, and comics were a big mess in 05. So when I started Tamerlan, I just wrote, and then I figured I'll put it out on the internet. And if someone likes it, the models I was kind of going with at the time were more along the lines of Penny Arcade and things like that.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
Well, yeah, because it was 05.
I know. I'm just like,
so
oh,
the
damn, Penny
idea-
Arcade. Damn. All right.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea was that I figured I was going to just write and then put pages up when I was done with pages, and you guys could read them and not read them if you so chose, whatever seemed like a thing. So if I like the first issue I did was, I think, 41 pages, and then the second
that's how
issue
you were
ended up being
running
like 73
Little
pages.
Robots, right?
Huh?
Little Robots?
No. This is Tamerlan.
Well, I know, but that's kind of how you were running the Little Robot series. Like, look, Robot comic strip series was that same way.
Springs is a different story.
Springs. There we go. That's the name. I was like,
Springs as a daily strip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how you were running it, though.
Yeah.
So I never thought to plot out like this.
Okay, so how is it improved? Like, how has it improved your storytelling when you're planning this out? Like, how do you feel like the differences being more organized versus being more loose?
I feel like stuff like this makes it easier for me to make sure I included all the things. When I wrote Tamerlan, I would tootle along and put issues together, so to speak, and then go back and go, crap, I forgot to say this thing, or I forgot to put this point in, or this point could have been said with one sentence, and instead I spent 5 pages on it. And stuff like that, where it was not necessarily tight. Like, considering things like other things like Campbell's hero's journey as a structure is very cool because it gives a lot more of a framework to work with. I don't like to limit myself to it, but I feel like with the framework, it gives me sharper resolve. I think with me, the biggest thing is some restriction is very important to me.
I was about to ask you about that.
Because if I don't have rules, I paint myself into a corner. The last issue of Tamerlan, I literally painted myself into a corner and couldn't get out of it. I ended up just having to kill the episode because there was no way to get out of the story except by cliche.
Okay.
So I couldn't get out of it except to Deus Ex Machina it or, something. There was no way out of it. And I spent a year stopped just mulling over how could I get out of this. And I had already published all of the issues up to that point. But since I didn't finish the story at the beginning, I didn't come up with a beginning, middle, end at the beginning. I just had a great idea and I ran with it. I ended up kind of rolling into a point where I just couldn't. And that was the last time I said, I'm doing that. I'm not doing that anymore. I can't. I clearly cannot just be one of those writers that just starts writing and then finishes a manuscript.
Yeah.
I have to structure it out.
Yeah, but I think by doing all the work that you've been doing on the show, I think that actually kind of shows that you're kind of sticking to that. I do want to point out when the time frame that you talk about when Tamberlin ended, a lot of the times, almost, I want to say about 85 to 90% of all storylines, indie or even like nationally known in the US at least, were kind of always ended in a way where it never really ended anything.
Right.
So I just want to point out, you kind of followed a trend that was already going on around you naturally. And so by stopping it right there, it just means that you kind of just went with how most people at the time were used to things ending. So
Well, I'm going to
about
pick
it.
that story up again and put it into Bellatrix. So
Right.
I'm going to repurpose that story with the same concept and the same idea, but I'm going to put it into Bellatrix Rising so that it makes more sense. And
you're also at different rules of reality.
Right.
Well,
it'll fit better.
With that reality.
It'll fit better.
Yeah.
And if it ends on a cliche again, for whatever reason, the concept that I took will fit the larger story arc now of Bellatrix, which was not present in my Star Trek story. My Star Trek story was literally just another ship in the Federation during Kirk's time. So I couldn't play with an upper plot. I couldn't play with something messing with the galaxy or whatever, because we all knew that nothing messed with the galaxy. Right. You know, because we know what happened at the end of TOS. We ended up with V'ger showing up, and then we had Khan, and then we had, like, you already know what happened at the end of this story arc. You can't really say, uh-oh, the galaxy is threatened, and have everybody go, oh no, what will happen? Whereas
find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, right? No, next time on Dragon Ball Z, and it's like 90% of the previous episode with 10% improvement.
Right.
That's actually a lot. Multiple shows.
But in the instance of like Bellatrix, I can say, okay, the galaxy's going to explode if they don't find the widget, and everybody will go, well, crap, it might, because we don't know what comes after this episode.
We don't know what a widget is.
Yeah, and we don't know what the widget is, and the MacGuffin. They got to go get the MacGuffin, otherwise the galaxy will blow up. And
every single time I hear the word MacGuffin, I think of like these very failed, tested. Because where I grew up in Florida had testing restaurants for like McDonald's and Burger King and stuff.
Oh, that kind of testing. Yeah, I was like,
food testing, folks. Food testing. I'm from Florida. It's food testing.
You never know.
The other type that Colton's thinking about is.
That's why I was like, Pepper, you're from Florida. I'm really concerned about this story now.
So, anyways, so there was a product at McDonald's that had a very similar name to MacGuffin.
Like a McMuffin?
Yes, but it was an actual muffin.
Right.
So, like, that's what I think about when you say MacGuffin. Because,
but I mean, and when we talk about like building stories and constructing stories, this makes me feel better too. And actually, this construct is great for me because now I can actually see, like here, I'm talking about, when we talk about in this story, this first part, the guys here have already been already are familiar with General Order 21 and the coffee, because I've been talking about this scene, and it's I now know that I'm allotting myself 4 pages for this.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's perfectly normal and everything is normal. The scene we're talking about is just, Chang is making coffee, and this young ensign comes up and says, sir, I got to give you this report. And she's like, don't you know what General Order 21 is?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he's
I
like,
remember
no.
that.
And it's like, you're not allowed to give the captain reports prior to coffee o'clock. And
I remember this
see, I heard the Badoop there.
There he
There's
is.
Brian.
There he is. I heard it that time.
Yeah.
Ha!
He's
Hi.
alive.
Here.
So,
But yeah, I mean, but the thing is, when I wrote that script with this scene, I already have written it, and it's already 7 pages. So
okay.
now I know I have given myself 4. So now I know that I can go back, and now I go back and I say, okay, what is the essence of this scene?
Cut the fat. Yeah.
Some artist had said, and I mean, like one of the guys in our field, Jack Kirby or somebody like that who's in our field, had said, the way to write a script is go back through the script, find the thing that's most important, throw everything else out, and then write the hell out of that one thing. And I thought that was a fascinating, I may not agree, but I thought it was a good thought process. And so now I'm going to do the same thing out of this scene. I've written it. I'm going to go back, find what's the key essence point. What are we trying to express in this scene? And then write the hell out of that. And then make it 4 pages.
I just want to point something out, though. You can go and do that, but there's also, like, for me as a person, like when I'm writing or developing something with Bill, I always kind of like little side expansions on certain things that he writes. Now, mind you, Bill is very detailed when he writes a story. So for me, I kind of need to build off of that. And when I do mine,
build?
Yeah, I have to build. I have to build on Bill. Yeah. But when I'm writing for myself, I am very clear and defined, like on what, because when I do story plotting for my own stories that I write, it's definitely different than what you're showing, because like I don't really have a page count really in mind.
Yeah.
I give myself a resting settled page count at the beginning of my projects. And then as I write, I'm like, okay, no, I'm going to need another page here. I'm going to need another page here. So I kind of
this can become a part 1. This can become a part 2.
Yeah, like that kind of deal. Like sometimes, like I'll write a full-on page, and I'm like, no, the pacing's off, and so I have to add another page, or I have to take some of the page I'm working on, put it to the next page, and then that just kind of trickles down to give me another page in the end anyway.
Trickle down page ticks.
Yep. And it's in what you're talking about is you're doing the opposite, like where you're not doing it while you're writing it. You've already written it. Now you're going back and editing. And I don't edit myself essentially in that same manner. And I don't know if Brian agrees with anything. So, hey, how about you guys talk about something that you've written for the process?
So this was supposed to be a 32-page comic. By page 20, the main thrust of this section was supposed to already happen. It hasn't happened yet. I don't think I'm going to make it to that particular section because I keep having to go, oh, I need a page here, or I need to expand this here, and it's ballooning my page counts a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important because it helps give what's going to be the end of Act 1 more impact.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, in that way,
I have sort of the same problem that Brian has. If left alone, I just keep adding pages until I have 70 pages, and that's not a problem if you're doing a comic that is online. And that actually was something I was thinking whenever Pepper was talking. I'm cutting cool things out, but I'm keeping them. Okay. And what I'm going to do now, because I can, is I'm going to go ahead and generate those pages at some point in time as a side story of this scene, and I'll give them to my patrons. Mm. Or there will be, issue 1, issue 2, and then an issue of side stories.
So on
this
that note,
entire-
though, sorry, I just wanted to
Oh,
jump
go
in
ahead.
on that one because you got to also look at it's the is it elevator pitch? I
Yeah,
can't
the
remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, you pretty much like take the whole story of Star Wars, the first 3 that came out, 7, 8, 9.
Uh-huh.
It's Luke and Vader. That's the whole story. Everything else, Han Solo and all them, don't matter
Don't matter.
for the actual main story, but it's not as entertaining without putting in all that other stuff.
Right.
Now, with that said, though, like that's how I write. I just keep writing until I feel like the story I'm trying to tell right there and then is done, and then I break it down to start seeing how many pages this be, how many panels this is going to be in a comic format, and then after that, I start looking at, is this going to be books? Is this going to be just a book? And then I'll start breaking it down because all the fluff is also part of the entertainment.
Right.
If all you're doing is cutting out entertainment, but also like just cutting out all the fun stuff that also you enjoyed doing, your the clientele is also supposed to enjoy that too, because those are the people you're trying to go for, the people that actually like the same stuff that you do.
Yeah.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that having things balloon is not necessarily a bad thing. For example, it gives you a chance to dive and give more depth to characters, so that when you're hitting the main point, when you finally get to everything is going to hell in the story, it has more impact.
Right.
Emotionally, particularly if the audience falls in love with a particular character who is a secondary character, and that character for whatever reason gets killed off, they immediately feel for the main character more, and
Right.
that just gives absolutely more impact. So don't necessarily cut everything. Keep some things for character and world building.
Right.
Well,
And it-
there are. I want to address that real quick, because I want to be very clear. This is the way that has worked for me, because I felt like my stories wandered. When rereading Tamerlane, it wasn't to the point. It wandered off into exposition land for 10 pages and then came back into the point and then wandered off again in another direction. This is only for my personal benefit. I don't think that there's anything wrong with what Brian's doing, because I think Brian's stories are still succinct and solid. And when Brian adds pages in, he's fine. There's no issue with what's going on. When I add pages in, it starts to get fluffy and weird, and I feel like I could have said all of these 5 pages in literally one sentence, which would have solved all of that, and I wouldn't have needed to go in there and go through this whole thing. A good example of this is there is the old adage of show it, don't say it. Except that there's the reverse of that, which is if it's not part of the plot, saying it will have the same impact as showing it. For example, I have a character who's had a rough childhood. My main character's had a rough childhood. She's a genetically altered human. She lived in a culture that was restrictive. They, really messed with her when she was a kid. And she can say that. Like, oh, I totally understand growing up rough. I grew up being a genetically modified human, and not having to go through 12 pages of showing her struggling, going through the streets and all this stuff, which is what I would do when I was writing Tamerlane. I would break out into these sub-stories of the character running through the streets having a bad day. And it was like, well, you don't need that. She could just say it and it would still work.
But I'll give you a
Counterpoint
to that. Look at Berserk. If you, the arc that everybody loves is the Golden Age. But if you really break it down, that is him trying to explain Guts's backstory. Because
Right.
there was so much, and instead of it becoming a side story, it became a main arc. And it became an
Sure.
arc everybody loved because suddenly Guts went from being this absolute asshole that no one liked, who was willing to sacrifice everybody for his quest for revenge, to suddenly he became a sympathetic character. And you
Oh,
need the Golden Age arc to make the first arc really feel solid.
But
So don't.
I don't want you to think that I'm criticizing. I'm not.
No.
My own personal thing.
I don't think Brian's criticizing you, and I don't think you're wrong, guy. I think what he's trying to say is sometimes that material that we see as artists that can be like discarded by us so easily because we're detrimental sometimes to ourselves
Sure.
can be used to basically be told to our audience, which will allow other characters to shine, to have more connection to the story, and everything like that. So in your case, you're taking some of the fluff that you're taking out. You're going to be putting it back in somewhere else for other people to see, either as an exclusive for your patrons, or
maybe not. Maybe I'll just run it as another issue.
So the other thing you can do is you can still have the things where she's going, I understand I've had a rough life as well. I understand what you're going through, and have her say that. But then later on, you can actually use that to delve into what exactly is, and you can make that its entire own arc to really build the character. But don't necessarily completely cut it and leave it on the floor and just say.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying was, so one of the arguably best episodes of Tamerlane is The Last Night of the Year, which was a 7-page comic that I made in prose with illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
And all it is the last night of the year, which also happens to have been the last night that Sarah Cochran was alive. She was slowly dying. She was in the hospital. Her mom was with her, and her dad was with her, and they were both with her. And her dad's Vulcan in the original story. So it was all about the dad doing a mind meld between the daughter and Cochran so that Cochran could talk to the unconscious girl one last time. And that was a story that was originally in one of my comics and just was completely off to the right. And because it was so exposition-y, it ended up not having the impact it did when I pulled it out and made it its own story. And it in of itself is sort of one of the watershed moments of Tamerlane, where people went from, this is a little bit more than a fan comic. There is some depth here, some real storytelling going on. So, no, of course I'm not throwing anything away. In fact, I refuse to throw stuff away. I have a slush document where I take everything that I've cut and move it to the slush document, and it may be the germ of a new idea. All I'm doing is whenever I do these designs like I'm doing, I'm just trying to keep what I'm trying to tell streamlined. Because I will go, and in the case of The Last Night of the Year, what I wrote initially was not even remotely as powerful as what I took and then pulled it out into a full story. That was much more powerful. It is super impactful. People have written to me saying they were in tears at the end of it. So, power. But it didn't.
Hey, honey.
Honey, nice. What's up?
Hey, honey.
We're just talking about story writing, honey.
Right. It didn't have the same
Is Guy being a robot, or is that just me?
No,
Yeah,
Guy's
I'm
being a robot.
Low. I'm low on transmission. I can already see that I'm at 2 bars yet. So
I can buy you transmission fluid.
yeah,
For
so we're-
$20.
shipping and handling.
I'll get you a quart.
For
One of the
$19.99,
things I like
you
to
can buy
do is to tighten up my stories so that they're solid. One of the things I was going to talk about was this wheel of conflict and structure. So, you know, the scenes, every scene I try to get this wheel running that you see here. It's kind of hard to see because I've got, there we go. Let's see if I can make it like this. But the idea is you have a goal. The character walks in and needs to do X. Then there's a conflict. There's a reason why the character can't do X. Disaster, something just screws up the goal. Then there's a reaction. They get all freaked out. Then they have to figure out what they're going to do and a decision on what to do to get out of that scene. It's called scene and sequel. And everything isn't always have to be this straight up. But I like using this to keep me on target. Keep from wandering. There's nothing wrong with wandering. I have no problem with it, but some writers are better at it than me. Brian's really good at just saying, yeah, we need a couple more pages in here. And it doesn't wander off into the forest.
Well, that's because I have the opposite problem. Is I don't say enough. So when I go back and read a section, I go, "Oh my God, this jumps, and I need to clarify in between this and this."
Right.
So when I'm doing it, it's because I'm not saying enough.
Right. Oh, no, I'm doing great. I'm just robotic. Wait, did that count robotically? That'd be cool.
A little bit.
My robotic laugh. Okay, I'm done. Yeah, and like I said, some writers can do it and some writers can't. I don't want you guys to think that I'm hard on myself here. I felt like my comics I could have done more with less. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I had gone...
But I'm curious, do you dwell on that a lot?
Only when I'm doing the structure setup like this.
I was more reason I asked that is because I'm curious, like, how much time are you putting into more dwelling than actually producing?
Right. Not a lot. Not a lot.
Okay.
Bullshit. Oh God.
No. I mean, like, I have been structuring. I've been doing structure on my story since last night.
Okay.
So
You've been doing structure on your story for the last 6 months.
no. I'm talking about Momentary Ghosts.
Okay.
I actually wrote the script for Momentary Ghosts, but the problem... Okay, so here's another problem. I don't like crowded pages. Right?
Define crowded.
Huh?
Define crowded.
Too many text bubbles. Let's see if I can find a good example.
Oh, so you're talking about text bubbles. Okay, because I was about to say there's multiple different kind of crowded, because also, like, wasn't Watchmen like 12 panels per page almost?
9.
9?
Yeah.
Because it was...
Pepper, you're quiet.
It was the old style of a grid that was 3x3.
Hey, Pepper, I can't hear you.
Pepper, you are completely silent on our end. At least he can hear us. I can see his mouth talking. Okay, there you go.
Hey. There we go. Yeah, Guy must have muted me.
No, I didn't mute you. I don't actually have the ability to mute you.
Anyway,
well, I guess I do. But...
I think Watchmen, like, they had like 50 or more words per page, which is highly unusual.
He pretty much like did the max of everything on Watchmen.
Well, you can have more than 9 panels per page. If you do a Wally Wood page, you can have like a ton. You just have to do it very impactful, and you have to really choose when to do those.
Mm-hmm.
because Wallywood page is like up to 22 panels, and I'm talking they are David Lynch style type panels. Like you just have lips talking. You have two people that are poorly drawn, but you know that they are part of the story, and like it's all kinds of weird
Right.
but also great things to have happen. Now, Guy pulled up a page right here, and I kind of see what he's talking about. He doesn't like all the texts
This is
in the
too
word bubbles.
dense, right?
Really?
For me, it is. I feel
Oh, I was about to say
like
that looks great because you did like a good balance of
I did.
everything in
I
there.
mean,
Your
I can
zipatones and
make it
everything
work.
with your bubbles, like everything kind of bounces out the page.
Oh, I'm not saying it's bad. But there are a couple of things. One, when I did Tamerlane, and this is a page from Tamerlane, when I did Tamerlane, I didn't understand some of the rules. For example, you're not supposed to shrink text on pages. So when you print this out at manga size, this text is minuscule. It is so hard to read. In fact, just having me in the upper corner is difficult for you guys to read all of the text in this page. So now I've learned that you set a point value to your text and you try not to shrink it any more than you absolutely have to, right? And I get that, and I understand that, but like this is too dense for me. Here we get a little bit better, but I still feel like I've got kind of a density going on here. But then there's like cool things in here, you know. It's like
Density. Like I get what you mean by density, but like
that page is not dense.
no,
I
this
think
page
it looks
isn't dense.
great.
The next page is better.
But even the previous page wasn't that bad. Like I think you're being a little too harsh on it.
Well, okay.
Like that one.
Honestly, I think Guy is harsh on himself, and this
Yes.
kind of just proves it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes Guy can do really great stuff, but his self-detriment gets in his way.
True.
But the
And
problem
I'm
is
just
that's
saying this with love, Guy. Saying this with love.
no.
Those pictures are
I'm with
great.
you. I'm with
You're-
you. The
you
thing
know.
is, this is what the manga page turns out like. When it's okay, because there's a okay, I got to explain this kind of in a different way.
Guy, I believe we're getting what you're saying. You don't need to bring in more stuff. Please come back.
Well, no, I mean,
we get what you're trying to say. Come on, come back, please. Come back.
The difference between sizes is a problem. The difference between the size of a manga and the size of a normal comic book, and that is an issue with the amount of volume of text that I can put on a page.
Right,
because
and I understand
when it's
that.
smaller, I have to be. Anyway,
Also,
I'm not trying to say that I'm horrible. I'm not trying to say that Tamerlane sucked. I'm just saying I try to curb that a little bit by doing a little bit more on the editing side.
Also, you're comparing yourself to what the Japanese do, and remember, the kanji system
is a lot tighter.
Well, it's not only a lot tighter, but also a kanji can have a sentence worth of meaning.
Right.
Yeah.
So for them, a paragraph of text could only be a couple of lines. Whereas for us, it would be like this massive exposition on a page. So you also have to keep that in mind too, that when you're writing for English,
sure,
it's going to have a different character count than what the Japanese have to deal with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I also,
I'm not that. So
their scream's just one letter.
I'm not trying to say that I hate my work or I hate what I do.
I'm not saying that either.
But we're not saying that you hate your stuff.
That either. But here's what I've noticed when you talk about your story plotting and thing, and when you start comparing what you're doing now to Tamerlane, okay? And I'm just saying, I do this too. I think Brian probably does it too. I know Colton probably does it as well. We are all artists. We're all creatives. We all do it. We compare what we thought was bad in the past to what we're currently doing, what we've seen the improvement. And it sounds like we're not really happy with what we did, but we're not also celebrating on how far we've come to actually correct our internal mistakes that we saw we did in the past. And I think that's what we're. That's why I was I called it out, because I know where you come from and and you've shown it, but also I know that you're trying to go for a manga-esque style. And a lot of the people that I know that do manga here in the United States as an independent or a manga-like style, they're not following Japanese standards. They're following the American standards when they go to print. So sometimes you can probably get away with making yourself a little bit different in that manner of
Oh,
printing a little bit larger if you wanted to. So I think that's something
I
just to take away and
feel
think
like,
about.
yeah, I feel like I've
Know,
kind of gone into a sidebar that I didn't necessarily mean. Let me rephrase. I actually like trimming down my story and making it high speed, low drag. I
okay.
like that. I did like writing rambly and all over the place, and I was okay with that. But I actually find a certain amount of satisfaction to knowing that I cut this down to a much more efficient scene and still managed to get all the points that I was heading out with, but I didn't need to ramble on about the button blinking off and on. That really wasn't important, and it didn't help. It wasn't funny. It didn't further the scene. And you know what I mean? Like, for example, I have this scene here. Speaking of, we never talk about the things that we're proud of, right? In this scene, it's got, we've got Bennett talking to Ward, and she says, Julie once told me a Japanese proverb, the wise falcon hides his claws. And Ward says, I don't follow. And Bennett says, I'm not sure I do either. She does that. I liked that because it was funny that Bennett is like quoting Julie saying stuff and doesn't quite grasp what she was trying to say. So that wouldn't be cut. In the scene, I wouldn't cut that at
Mhm.
all. But what Bennett finally gets to in this bottom frame is saying something similar to what's going on up here in like Bennett's own words. The scene works. It still hits the same point, but it took 6 pages to get to this page. And the
Mhm.
truth of the matter is I probably could have done it in 2 and still gotten the same effect, the same points, the funny parts would still be in there, but we
Mhm.
wouldn't have to discuss the warp core having to be ejected at some point in time, which is what they were talking about 3 pages before. And the warp core never got ejected. So it wasn't even a Chekhov's gun. Like I didn't even set up a thing. It wasn't even useful. It was
Right.
just a scene.
And Brent
And
makes a really good point as well to what you're saying.
yeah, right. And that's all. That's all. I get a little bit of satisfaction out of taking a scene and
Hmm.
shaving it down until it is the essence of the scene. It also makes the story run faster.
Hmm.
Rereading Champion, I feel like it's slow, then fast, then slow, then fast, then slow, then fast, and it doesn't seem to have a pattern to it. It doesn't lead you on a roller coaster,
Hmm.
which is what I'm kind of after with Bellatrix Rising. Get you into the roller coaster. You know what I mean? Like, get you to the point where you're moving along and you're like, gosh, I got to know what's got to happen next is cool in my book. That feels awesome. That feels satisfactory.
Hmm.
And I don't have a problem with Tamerlane. It turned out fine. I'm very proud of the fact that I rolled out 300 pages. That is exciting to me. And they're 300 good pages. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with them. The artwork's solid. It's not my best artwork, but it was the first experiment into 3D backgrounds with 2D drawings on top of it. So, it's not quite as awesome as I've made Bellatrix Rising stuff because Bellatrix Rising stuff is really solid.
Hmm.
Um, so you can see where I came from
Yeah.
on these. But yeah, I like tightening stuff up. It's fun, it's satisfaction, you know. So
All right, next roast ever.
So the thing is that you guys are not wrong. I do have a predilection to wander into navel gazing and stay for years in navel gazing. And I've been really leaning a little on Brent, who has been doing a good job of saying, okay, this is great, but move on. You know what I mean? Like, he's been really pushing to make sure I move to the next stage and get out of navel gazing stage. And there are times where I've pushed back on Brent and said, no, I need to finish this one piece. And he's been okay with that, but he's always been like, okay, finish this one piece, then move on. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
that's been very useful.
so like what I was going to say earlier about that too, I think Brent notices it as well.
Mhm.
Is that you do sometimes like hyper focus
Absolutely.
in that sense on that, like I needed, like I can't let this happen again. I gotta fix this. Like it's already been fixed. Stop sitting and staring at it.
And you
And
guys are
that's
really good at seeing that. I just didn't
but-
want you to think that this was part of it.
No, and I don't think so either. But I know Brian has been dying to say something, so let's let him say something.
No. I'm trying to research names right now for this particular page that I'm working on,
Oh,
and I can't. I'm trying to
Robert.
find it. Well, it wouldn't work for this.
Antonio Suarez.
Because I originally was going to use Mui, but I think I'm using too many Japanese names because I named the first character that we met Mammy, which should be throwing off red flags to anybody who's read Madoka Magica.
So there is a website out there that I use all the time. And it is fantasy. What is it? I'm going to find it for you real quick because I love it because they've got random names that sound like this culture. And it is Fantasy Name Generator.
Brent's right. That's usually how my names come up. I'm like, yes, Bob.
Yeah.
Peter. She totally
Frank.
looks like a Peter. I'm naming her Peter. I'm terrible at naming people, so like,
Well,
yeah, that's usually
and also with like naming characters.
FantasyNameGenerators.com.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is one of the best things ever. Real names, and you can just, she randomly generates them by, like, you know, let's do Nepalese names, and there are 10 Nepalese.
Oh, Nepalese. Oh, I heard nipples. I was like, what?
Nepalese.
What are you trying to get me to look up?
No, it's
But
Nepalese.
this is, I use this page heavily because it gives me great names, and then I just find one that I feel like has a good rhythm to it, and I go with it.
Yeah.
You know, and I
cool.
You know, it's like that. So yeah, other names or real names here, and then you've got like Cornish names and cosmic names and Croatian names and Cypriot names.
See, and I'm like the weird one.
Oh,
I'm
ancient Egyptian
Brian,
names.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. I'm the weird one. I literally go to an herbal book and I open it and I know herbs.
So
like I've done that, but I'm.
The problem is I'm looking for names that have a meaning that if someone were to actually put it together, could guess what's going to happen to this group.
Okay.
So like Mammy has, I chose that on purpose, and a lot of people are going, I'm getting red flags about this character.
Right.
And it was perfect. It was exactly what I want, and I want that for the rest of the group where, you know, they have vastly different names, but then when you start to research the names, you start to get a lot of red flags about what's going to happen.
I think Mamie. I think the two most names that I have red flags with when it comes to manga or even in anime is Mamie and Momo. Momo is probably my bigger red flag than Mimi, because every single time I've seen a Momo in a series, she dies.
I was about to say that's probably a good. Yeah, that's a good one.
Because Momo is like one of those characters. It is the name of the very first magical girl that inspired the magical girl genre, and she comes in, she makes people's lives better, and then she's wham killed by a car.
Oh, is that the one that they can't actually show any they can't put it on repeat anymore because it causes like real life disasters every
PTSD.
time?
Yeah.
Well, it isn't just
PTSD.
It isn't just PTSD. They've actually had natural disasters occur when they've re-aired episodes of that show on
What show you're
TV.
talking about?
They
What are we talking
rebooted it 3 times, and they will not repeat. They will not show it after it goes off air. They will nope, they're gone.
Rodrigo Borgia.
Yeah.
Sailor
So
Moon?
No, Magical Princess Minky Momo.
Mickey Momo.
Mickey
Okay, I know
Momo,
what you're talking
yeah.
about. So
yeah,
okay,
it's
so
the very first magical girl series. So
I've seen it.
I have to real quickly put out a little bit of a cultural note. Japan doesn't rerun anything.
Yeah, but this is on a different scale. This is
No.
They refuse to even make
DVDs
of this show.
Now that's a different problem. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not saying that they redid it, rerun the series, guy. They rebooted the series twice after having it aired once. And after the airing once, there was a natural disaster in Japan.
Right.
The second time, they had a natural disaster in the form of an earthquake. And the third time they ran it, they had another natural disaster. So basically, it became, we're not doing this anymore, and we don't even want to think about what would happen if we did it a fourth time.
Right.
And then it goes into the
I'm aware of
Being
Minky
four.
Momo,
Yeah.
and I just never have heard of the
Oh, dude,
the
it's
impact.
a deep dive. It's a deep dive.
Oh,
Well,
I
no,
just
I mean,
sent him a
I mean,
link to the
obviously,
video.
I come from an era. My anime era is late 80s, early 90s. So that's when I really was big into anime and watching everything. And so I'm sure I have seen Minky Momo somewhere along the line because I'm familiar with the characters and I'm familiar with the story and stuff like that. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that unlike American TV, where we rerun everything all the time on Pluto TV and stuff like that, they never do that in Japan.
Yeah.
And so Macross, my favorite series of all time, Macross ran one time, and they put it out on DVDs and VHS, and everybody bought it, and yada yada yada, and and it became a sensation. But it ran once, and
that's as far as their reruns go, is remaking the product.
Yeah.
Macross has the distinction of being the only show that they actually did rerun. They reran it again in 91 or 92, and they reran Macross, the original series, in 91 or 92, and it was a major, big, nobody knew what to do with it. But they did it in anticipation of bringing out Macross 7, which was a new series that they were going to run off of Macross. But that's an important thing to note. They never rerun stuff. So you run it once, then you throw it on a DVD. That's the way they run everything.
So Brian, is this character's name now Momo Bob?
Momo Bob?
Yeah.
Bob Momo?
I think I'll actually use Momo as the slang name for her, but it's enough. It's good enough for that people to go,
Yeah, it is. Getting back to talking about. So
wow. In episode 46 of the original series became infamous due to this depiction of Momo dying after being hit by a truck carrying toys.
Yep.
In an issue of Anime Magazine Out, series writer Takeshi Shudo explained that this is due to toy sponsor Poppy pulling their funding due to poor merchandise sales, despite strong ratings. Furious with this decision, Aussie Productions revolted and killed the character off at the end of the episode. While the character's death was only temporary, the scene was seen as a trailblazer that later allowed Magical Girl Productions to deal with darker themes. The episode, along with the last, later inspired Japanese urban legend linking the series to natural disasters. This episode, alongside the last episode, is what it's saying. Wow, it was
I like that. So, due to the toy company, now Magic Girls are dark.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
That's awesome.
Well, and it's not just that. It's like when you're writing, if an American writes a Magical Girl series, they kind of have to pull from the Magical Girl series genre of Japan.
Yeah.
Really closely. You have to kind of tie the two type themes together because a lot of you can get a lot of people cross over to your comic if you're doing it, and especially if they like Japanese style magical girls.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find interesting and fun is if you actually read Sailor Moon, at a certain point, they're all talking about they're about to die, and they're okay with it.
Right.
Yep.
And then the publisher was like, "Oh no, we need more."
Right.
You know,
well, that's
and
the Sherlock Holmes effect.
Yeah, and so like they effectively have died and came back to life several times just in that one story. Like Sailor Stars, I think, is the first arc that you actually know definitively how they keep coming back.
Yeah,
and because Sailor Moon kept resurrecting them, so essentially he's a lich, and the rest of them are like basically undead zombies at that point.
Like the manga, if you read the manga, it's like horribly dark. You watch people get melted in the manga, and you're like, shit, how did this get produced?
Man, I want both of these. I want both of these discs. Wow. Because it was talking about where the discs of Miki Momo's openings are. And there's an Emotion 20th Anniversary theme collection, which I have one of them, but there's 2 discs, which is cool.
Yeah. I mean,
which includes songs from Macross, Ai Obote Masuka, and Tenshi no Engo. So both of those are from, and voices from Macross Plus.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, and Heart and Soul. Oh, there's some good
and
stuff.
Also, what we were talking about before also leads into like how when you do write, like how effective are you at pulling from other parts of the same genre that you want to be in. And I mean, we all know that Guy really pulls from his genre for sure. So
happily, with great glee.
So
I am a hardcore sci-fi with robots sort of nerd.
Yeah, and for something like on a weird track, like for some odd reason, when I write, I think I do a lot more slice of life because for me, slice of life comics are calming.
Mm-hmm.
I love slice of life comic.
Like I don't know why that they are, and I think what it is like the first comics that I knew of when I was a kid were slice of life, like every Sunday.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So I think,
and that's the thing is like everybody has sort of a pull there to that. Like I like slice of life. That's why I write Springs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're talking about writing them. Oh, I was more talking about I just enjoy slice of life because it is like what Pepper says. It's calming.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like it pulls me. It just. It's kind of nice reading about someone else's life, even though you're like, I know it's never going to be real, but it's nice.
Well, and I write Springs under the same pretense, and it's actually one of the reasons why I try to keep Springs on Monday, although I've been super busy the last few months, but try to keep Springs even when I can on Monday because it's calming to write about, a whole bunch of robots having a bad day with, I don't know, Microsoft Word. There's something funny about that and calming. Everybody has problems.
You should have them discover Microsoft Word XD.
Right.
Sorry, or Microsoft. Microsoft. What's that one from the early 2000s?
Windows XP.
Windows
Windows
XP. The one
Yeah.
that had like tons of bugs in it.
Right.
Oh,
We're trying to restore this person, but their scan disk is saying that we need the Windows XP to install, and they can't upgrade beyond this point. What are we supposed to do?
Get the floppy.
Get the floppy.
I saw a hilarious thing. Apparently, Microsoft, when they switched to XP and got rid of Clippy, they had an entire ad campaign about firing Clippy.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
I remember seeing
Yeah.
that.
And Clippy was voiced by Gilbert Godfrey.
Aw. Rest in peace, Gilbert Gottfried.
You
I
know what?
do remember those days. That was hilarious.
Genie and
Sorry.
Iago are now together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta think that's still sad to me.
It is.
Losing Gilbert Gottfried. I mean, I know he was in pain at the end, so it's good, but still.
Speaking of Clippy, during the whole Microsoft buying Blizzard thing or whatnot, like Clippy returned, and all the little ad memes and everything.
Yeah.
They're like, he's finally going to be in like Halo. It was great.
Honestly,
They're like, we're getting rid of Cortana from Halo and we're putting in Clippy. So instead of actually having Cortana telling him things, it'd be Clippy like sitting there like banging on the like on his helmet. It's like, you need to listen to me. You're going the wrong way.
I think the funniest addition to the Star Trek universe is Badgie.
Badgie?
Yeah, that's funny. So it's a Lower Decks joke,
Okay.
but they've added a character called Badgie, which the engineer in Lower Decks was trying to be helpful. And so he made Badgie, which is effectively Clippy in the holodeck,
That's
right? Except that he didn't program him quite straight. So Badgie keeps coming in and going, "Can I teach you a lesson?" And it like gets, like, "Can I teach you a lesson?"
It gets really
dark
disturbing.
quick.
It's dark.
And it's just, I think that was a clever statement on how things can go wrong in Star Trek, but also a clever statement about Clippy.
Well, and what I find interesting is if with the sale of Blizzard and stuff like that, they already have like several characters that have similar names to Clippy inside World of Warcraft.
Oh yeah.
And there is an actual pet that you can decorate in World of Warcraft that has a very similar name named Chirpy.
Chirpy.
I do remember that. You are right.
And
Okay.
so like I seriously do think like if they're gonna do anything with Clippy, it may show up there.
Oh, it might. That's if,
Yeah.
because I know Microsoft still has not bought them out. They have to wait until like June or something like that for everything to clear.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well,
'cause I've been doing a lot of research on it still, but yeah.
Yeah, because it's they need to make sure that it's okay because the ECC will shut the sale down if it looks
Not
like
even
a
that, but
matter.
apparently the governor is involved now in a different standard of that.
Yeah.
He was getting information beforehand, and that's how Activision was able to answer certain questions that they weren't supposed to.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a problem with ECC.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
It's a problem with ECC. So it's you know what though, a lot of people don't want the sale. I'm afraid a lot of people don't.
Oh, I get it.
Because once that sale hits, the natural progression of World of Warcraft and all their games being ported over to Xbox is most likely.
Right.
A lot of people have been wanting a port, though, specifically.
You know what? I get the reason, but honestly, I play and it's much better for the PC.
Oh no, it's built for PC.
Yeah, it's not really a game you.
No.
It's not a game like it's not a game like Zelda. It's not a game like Halo. It's not a game like those. It's a game where you just want to sit in front of your computer, relax, and shut a bedroom door and not go out and spend time with your family if they're annoying you. You know?
Yeah.
when I play with Bill, I sometimes will shut the door and only talk to him in text. So there you go.
I've never done that. I mean, really, I guess.
I mean, well, by saying like away from your family, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just like sometimes you just don't want to talk to your family.
Sometimes you just want that separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
nothing wrong with that, I guess.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure Guy's son doesn't want to spend time with him 100% of the time, just like Maya.
For your species, no, actually, you're right. He does spend an awful lot of time avoiding me. Sometimes it happens. It happens.
Of course,
Yeah,
he's getting to that age where it's going to happen more and more.
True. There's a certain amount of truth to that.
And then after a certain stage, after a certain point in that stage, all of a sudden he's only coming to you and never to his mom.
Yeah. That
Or
would
vice
be-
versa.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
Anything.
I was say because that's what me and my brother started going to my mom for everything. Because my dad was always like, "Go ask your mother." Go ask. So
Go
we
ask
just
your mother.
completely, we just completely cut him out of the situation at like, I think I was 16 is when I finally just like cut him out. I was like, "All right, cool." So I always went, "Mom," I was like, "What does your dad say?" He's like, "He's going to tell me to ask you," and she's like.
Well, and I grew up in a matriarchal family, so for me, it was you always have to ask your mom. Your father will never give you the answer that you actually want, not want, but actually get. Like
that you can actually use.
Yeah, the one that you have to use is the one from mom. You do not get one from dad because dad would like say yes to everything, and then my mom would be like pissed because my dad said yes, and she was like, "We can't do that. Now I have to be the bad guy."
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but my mom's family, it's I learned basically before I was like 6 or 7 years old that I only ask important questions to a female in my family versus a male.
Oh no, I get that part too.
That's interesting.
Well, my family was set up where my grandmother was the head, and so it kind of trickled down.
The head.
Yeah, like my grandmother.
Your grandmother was the Voltron.
Yeah, my grandmother was the head of Voltron, and then her 3 daughters, and then all of my aunts and uncle, all my aunts and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't have like I mean, I had male cousins, but I have more female cousins and more female family members than most people. So I don't know. For
We
storytelling,
did talk about this. Your family's more female oriented than male oriented. I remember having this conversation.
It is. It is. It makes it fun for when you're trying to write like matriarchal things because I can actually pull from that experience of using that.
Yep.
Guy, are you
I like matriarchal.
matriarchal?
Yeah, I like matriarchal.
Yeah. I gotta love my accent sometimes. Some weird words come out.
I think that's ADD. I don't think that has anything to do with your accent.
Yeah, well,
You're just screwed up
yeah.
sometimes.
yeah.
Nothing we could do about it.
But I mean, for telling a story like Treehouse Witch, it's matriarchal, and so she goes to her grandmother to get permission to go get a familiar to go to the human realm.
That's cool.
Okay.
I like it.
So,
I can
but
dig it.
she's also going against her own mother's wishes by doing so.
Fair.
But she went to her grandmother, so her grandmother trumps her mom. That's on how that worked.
With a red hat, or I'm joking.
With a red hat?
Red
No,
hat.
my grandmother would always have a purple hat. My mom would be the red hat.
Well, you said your grandma always trumps your mom.
Well, when I was a kid, my grandma would trump my mom. So, like, basically, if my mom said no, my grandma said yes. My grandma would do it behind my mom's back.
Yeah,
That's how
that was
That's a Southern grandma thing.
that's a Southern grandma thing. I think you're right because it's like that would be the same thing that would go on in my world too.
Yeah.
Although, interestingly, one of the props I got to give my dad is that he was really big on we can't do X, Y, or Z because your dad told you could not do it. You know what I mean? The only thing he screwed that up on was that I really didn't want my kid watching police procedurals
Huh?
because they all
like
sort of
911 and
well, no, like, you know, investigation of murder and things like that. And dad was really into those. And later on, I found out that my kid kept going in and just sitting down and watching them. And then I found this out when my kid was like, well, you know, if you do DNA testing on sperm samples, you can figure out. And I'm like, okay, you're 6. Where did you get all of this from? Oh,
Damn.
I was hanging out with grandpa. We were watching. I'm like,
I was hanging out with Grandpa. He taught me about sperm.
well, that wasn't a problem. It was the problem I have with all of those is you kind of get this opinion that you'll get murdered every other second because every episode is, so we were hanging out here and this person got murdered.
Murder.
You know, and it's like,
murder.
yeah, it's like I didn't want my kid to start believing that just existing meant that you were going to be murdered at any second, you know.
well,
And so I was trying to avoid that.
I'm gonna wait for him to say it.
So I just stumbled upon something that I sent Guy that we should talk about.
Okay.
The curse of Mikimomo.
No.
Is it murder?
Is it murder?
So this is someone that's looking to commission an artist for $100 a year and $200 for as long as he wants for unlimited art. And he will never give you more than 6 pieces a month.
6 pieces a month?
For
For
$100
$100 a year?
Yeah.
Huh.
This person's serious?
Yes.
I need to see this advertisement.
Hey, I
Because
got
who
it.
the hell would want that?
Right here.
I mean, it's
I'll be right
consistent
back.
Put it up on the
clientele.
screen. I got it.
Oh.
Okay, so
This is
calling
bad as
for
this.
There we
Oh my
go.
god, I gotta
Wait,
find
wait,
this thing.
no,
I gotta
no,
show
no.
you guys something. Hold on.
There we go.
Okay,
Now that
wait.
you
works
guys
a lot
show me
better.
this, I have an idea. I have. Oh. where'd it go?
Okay, calling. So he's looking for a furry artist. Got it. Two pieces per week and no more than 6 per given month. All art would be strictly personal art. Okay, first, I don't know why this person would be wanting to do that. Second, he better be saying $100,000 a year because that would be. I would take it if it was $100,000. Yes. If he wanted to pay me $100,000, no more than $200,000 a year, yes, I would totally be down for doing that.
This reminds me of this resume we found at my school.
My gosh, this is.
I mean, if that's the quality he's wanting,
I wouldn't touch that with a 6-foot pole.
Yeah,
I mean, if
feel
that's
like
the quality he wants, I mean, I can knock
That's if
that
it's
out
a-
in less than like in 2 hours. I'm like, all right, cool, $100, thank you, bye.
I mean,
Yeah,
that would
but-
be like a 6-foot pole that had herpes on it, I guess.
Yeah, but could you
6
knock
pieces
that
a
out?
month at $100. I mean, you do that. That's, I mean, quick
What,
math there.
72?
100 divided by 6 alone is too low.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like,
Yeah. Well, but you can't do 100. It's 100 for a year. So that is what,
right.
$100
So,
for a year.
but I'm just saying, even if the deal was $100 a month,
Yeah.
it still would be too low.
My question though is
Yeah.
like, and $200 for as long as I want. That doesn't make sense.
That means that forever he could just come, hey, I gave you $200. I want art.
Right.
10 years later, I still want art from you.
Yeah, I gave you $200 in the contract.
That's if you signed a contract.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, and it looks like there's more pictures to it. Is there more pictures to it?
No, that's just my history with Brian.
Oh, okay. All right, not a problem then. Um, yeah, no, that is probably, I don't know, like that is just there's so many levels of wrongness to it.
Oh yeah.
$1.38 each picture.
Yeah, no,
$1.38.
That's like one of those things of people who are just starting out get swindled by people like that.
Yep. Well, I've been swindled by this. There's been some rather unpleasant experiences that I've had through my life because of this. I actually, a few months ago, about 6 to 8 months ago, I started doing, going back through all of my art and trying to get it all in one folder because it's all over the place. I have
There we
all
go.
of my art going all the way back to high school. I scanned it all in. It's all scanned in, yada, yada, yada. Everything's there. But it's in this folder or in that folder or over here or over there or whatever. And I'm trying to get it all in one place. And the number of first 6 pages of comics that I have done for people is sad and appalling because each and every one of those represents oh, no, we'll pay you. And then by about 6 or 7 pages in, I realized they're not paying me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Each and every one of those. And there's like 15 of them. And it's just horrible. That's a horrible thing to realize that, it took until I was nearly 50 years old to realize that my best bet is to write what I want to write and print it and sell it at comics conventions. And if it sells, yay. If it doesn't, yay.
I did
And
that
who
with
the
one of
hell
my
cares?
friends. One of my friends, I had him pay me per page, and I wouldn't give him the page or start on the next one until he gave me money, and he did every time.
Yep.
And I don't think we actually finished it either. We got to like page 15. It was a 20-page story, and he just
That's a
stopped
bummer.
paying, stopped talking. And I was like, all right, we'll come back to it later. I still have him, just in case he ever wants him. I'll finish him up. He's never hit me up for it. I'm like, it's almost done. It's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I finished it too after that because we were at page like 15 of 20, and I was like, I'm just finishing it. And I finished it. It's sitting here. He just never said anything afterward.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show, like, sometimes you just need to walk away from a project.
Yeah.
Well, I also feel like, some people, their life changes. I've seen that. Like their life changes up. They get divorced or whatever. Like we were just talking about at the beginning of the show. You moved out from your mom's house,
Yeah.
Like the world changed a little bit for you. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh yeah.
That's just the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak.
Moved into my first place. It was a trash heap. It was very not nice. And even when I moved out, my mom was like, this is where you were living for a whole year? I'm like, yep. And that's when she was like, and I was like, you're the one that kicked you guys. Like, it wasn't her specifically. It was my dad. And I looked at both of them because they both helped me move out. I was like, you're the ones that kicked me out. And they were just like, my dad was like, like that's when he realized. And that's when he like was lenient on letting me stay for like a few months to find a better place. Cause he's like, if this is what you're going into and I'm moving you right back out, you're going right back into the same place. I'm like, yeah.
Well, and I mean, it was like when I first moved out of my mom's house, my mom's house, and I was moving out for the first time on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I was like 17 years old trying to get everything together. And I turned 18, then graduated high school, had a whole summer basically traveling nonstop to different places. And then I went to school like right after that. So I had to have like everything moved out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, here's like I'm running around at 17 learning, oh, I need this deposit so that I can get into my dormitory. My dormitory, I move in. I have 2 other roommates. I've never shared a room in my life. All of that stuff. And and I'm like sitting there like, okay, well, this is a new experience for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that was like basically there, but like I want to say my early 20s, like I had tons of roommates and I had a ton of toxic roommates and I had all of that, and like I never really moved back in with my parents until I was like done separated from my first marriage. And when I moved back in with my mother, me and my sister were talking, and she also moved back in with my mom for a short time, and we both talked about on how it was so stressful to us. We lost weight. Like we could not, like we are now adults and we could not live with our mother again.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I noticed that one as well. You can never go
Going to the
home.
Marines though is a little different though, Brent, I think.
well, you know what though?
You're kind of
It
forced
has
into
a
like,
point,
hey, you
though.
can't.
Yeah, you're
That's,
forced to
like,
stay with
it
people.
pretty much like for me, that's basically what it felt like, because I didn't like the moment I graduated was like literally 13 days after I turned 18. And then
Yeah.
once I graduated, I had to get everything in order because I was not going to be I was going to be with my dad for like a month and a half. And then I had sleepaway camp where I was a camp counselor. And then I had, like I had a bunch of things I had to be separated from my family for. So when I came back, it was like, bam, I'm gone again. And I was off at school and I was there for year round school. So like I never took summer off when I went to college the first time.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that's the thing. And I think the one thing that probably hurt the most when Dad passed was the realization that there is no going back anymore.
mhm.
You know, it wasn't like I've been living with my dad, I mean, I stayed with him from, I finished my job in December here in Colorado and then shipped out to Japan in March. So I had this gap of 3 months where I stayed with my dad in Texas.
But also,
And-
like, going to a totally different country though, like that's a totally
yeah,
different
but I mean,
experience.
what I'm trying to kind of get at is that's the last time that I voluntarily stayed with my dad
Mhm.
and moved back, and that was what, 05?
Mhm.
Yeah. And so it's not like I've been in and out of his house, and Mom passed away in 02, and she was literally living in an apartment that was smaller than the place I was staying with James.
Mhm.
So there was no moving back in with my mom. Once I left, she lost the house that we were living in, that we grew up in, so to speak. She was renting that, and the owner of the house one day said, "Yep, I'm selling the house, so you can either buy it from me or bye." And Mom couldn't afford it, so she just had to move out. But that happened at a time when, that was just the way it went, and that was 96. So
Yeah, that's
from
before.
96 on, my mom wasn't in a place that I could stay with, and
Yeah.
I mean, I could go back to where Dad lived if I really needed to, but eh, so I guess part of what really hurt losing Dad was just the realization that there is no way to go home.
Yeah.
There's no way to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
The
can't stay
closest.
with Jane.
I mean, that's
I
what
love Jane
like
dearly,
literally
but I don't
that
know her.
was this year. Last year, end of last year. That's pretty much realization kicked in as well a little bit about that same thing because my mom moved out of state.
Yeah.
Moved out to Utah because she got a job out there. Me and my dad don't talk anymore. So I was like, it's just me and my brother. My brother's off with his girlfriend. They're living, doing their thing. And I was like, if anything ever goes wrong, I have no fallback.
Right.
Or if my fallback happens, I'm going to a state that I don't want to go to.
Yeah. You don't have
Like,
the.
if anything should happen to me, I have to go back to Florida.
Yeah.
and I don't
Right.
want to go back to Florida. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
I mean, and same token, I mean, I don't want to go back to Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean
I
that's like
spent some quality time there and realized that I really don't want to be in Texas.
Yeah. But
that was like
I
an
mean,
eye opener for me as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, I had that realization, sort of, kind of in the fact that I stayed with my grandparents as a child for a very large chunk of my childhood.
Right.
I was with them at their house,
Same,
and
bro.
so
Same.
when my grandmother
Only
passed
for one reason
away,
I'll ever go out there.
when
I
my
never want to
grandmother
go to
passed
Texas
away,
again.
and my sister was living at the house, it just felt weird going back to the house because my sister was in my grandparents' bedroom, like she was living in the house, like she owned it.
Mhm.
And for all intents and purposes, she was upkeeping and everything like that. But it was no longer my grandparents' house, and I didn't feel like I could just crash in the house anymore.
And
Like
there's something
very
different about siblings, because I was like, when I moved all the stuff back from my dad's storage unit, I drove back in a U-Haul and went
Mhm.
from Houston to San Antonio and hung out with my sister for 2 days, just long enough so that the long haul back to Colorado would not be so miserable, right?
Mhm.
But it was her house, and
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
it all felt like my sister. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine living there. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
It's kind of the
like
same way with me and roommates. Like
but it went from it
my room's
felt
my
like
room.
home. My grandmother passed away, and now it doesn't feel like home anymore.
Right.
And like that's as close as I've gotten so far to that feeling that guy was describing, and stuff like that. Opposite side, my younger brother and me were in Rhode Island for my first time together in Rhode Island, and he's sitting there. We're in downtown Bristol, where my grandmother grew up, and my dad grew up, and we're there for my grandfather's memorial service.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Do you want to go see Dad's house that he grew up in?" And he's like, "Wait, what? Dad grew up in a house?" And I was like, "Yes. It's not that far from here. We can walk." And so I took him over to the house, and I explained to him where the parade route is in the town and stuff for 4th of July. And I showed him the house that our ancestor, like our great grandfather, grew up or around and actually worked near, because the building right next to it was the family business stuff. And I gave him a whole bunch of story stuff, and he's like, "I'm so angry at our dad for not telling us that this is on how it was for him." And then it's one of those things of he got mad because he couldn't picture home.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so when we're talking about home and stuff, and we were talking about writing stories earlier, it's those moments where you can really pull, if you want to say a person had a rough childhood or a rough life growing up, you can take those little tiny glimpses of your own family and how they reacted to certain things and actually kind of pull it into the story of complete strangers, that are outside of your family, but it can connect to other people in a very positive manner by being shown that, yeah, maybe someone's pulling from a personal experience and doing that whole shebang and stuff like that. So that's what I was getting at. I'm sorry.
I got to take off.
It's 11:04 now. So.
It's 11:04, so the show's over.
Yep.
So it's all right. We'll see you all next week. Thank you for all joining me, all 4 of you guys.
Seven.
Thanks for being here, Hone and Brent, and even Andrew was here for a little bit before we scared him off.
And Ghost Hand.
And Ghost Hand too. Ghost Hand, don't forget
Ghost Hand was here too. We had a whole bunch of people. So that's awesome. Well, guys, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week. And for everybody else, remember, keep your eyes on the stars. Bye-bye.
Bye.
computer. Good night.